Over the past 75 years, more than 10,000 chemicals have entered our food supply, but the EU allows just 300 additives. At Thrive Market, we prioritize quality, banning over 1,000 ingredients found in conventional grocery stores. Our Healthy Swap scanner helps you find better versions of your pantry essentials without the junk, dyes, or fillers, and everything is delivered right to your doorstep. So shop at a grocery store that actually cares about your health at thrivemarket.com/get-started for 30% off your first order and a free $60 gift.
Now back to Clint and Sean on Sackheads Radio, radiating elegancy and quality.
We're back, 347-205-9399 on the simulcast here on Blog Talk Radio and Spreaker and iHeartRadio. Is that a simul or a trimulcast? It doesn't matter. We're there. You can find us. You can also grab us on the iTunes download if you missed the beginning of the show. So, getting back, the Benghazi testimony documents were released. Ed Henry from Fox News pressed the president's spokesperson, Jay the Carney. I have a lousy beard.
Does he have mange?
We should really send him to a groomer.
No, really. I mean, is it just me, or does his beard look like he has mange?
I don't know. I think he has mange, but what do I know? I'm not a vet. So here's that exchange real quick.
The quick things on Benghazi. There were newly declassified documents released by Republicans on the Hill yesterday. They show that in private testimony to a House panel, some of the president's top military advisors at the time, General Ham, General Dempsey, and others, believed within minutes of the attack in Benghazi that it was an attack, probably a terror attack. And yet, you know, we've talked about this before, for many days after the president, but you specifically at that podium, said we did not know whether it was a terror attack. Why, if these military leaders testified to Capitol Hill that they knew it was an attack, almost immediately, why did you continue?
I'd say one thing, two things. First of all, of course it was an attack. The facility was attacked. Right. There was never any doubt about, come on, Ed. I mean, I know there's a desire here to color outside the lines, but this is just not factual. Of course it was an attack. It was an attack that led to the deaths of 4 Americans. And there has been a significant amount of investigation to find out what went wrong when it came to security and to recommend steps that should be taken, and which we are taking, to do everything we can to ensure it doesn't happen again. So I think there has been a lot of reporting on this, and there has been a lot of inaccurate reporting on it, generally speaking, not just this particular case of House Republicans selectively releasing more testimony to outlets so that they can use it for political purposes. Yeah. But the idea that we were somehow saying it wasn't an attack, I mean, you know, the sky's blue, you know, up is not down, down is not up. Of course it was an attack.
Hey, a-hole, first of all, if anyone's used this, try to sway Benghazi in this whole incident for political gain, how dare you put it on House Republicans who released the documents as they did. They released documents. That's the Democrats have done that in the past. You want to throw political gain on that, that's fine. But just remember, everything that you say is for political gain. So shut your lying mouth, you little scumbag.
And didn't he say terrorist attack?
Yeah.
But then he said, well, of course it was an attack.
Of course it was an attack. Of course it was.
Well, yeah, it was an attack. No, dumbass, was it a terrorist attack?
Just absolutely. He just annoys me. If nothing else, I don't know.
Here's some just for men. Color your freaking mangy beard.
I don't know who I want to see go worse, the Carney or the president, when it's time for them to leave office. I don't know which is which. I don't think he's going to make the next 3 years. He's starting to snap. Look, he forgot how to shave. He can barely keep himself. He's dirty and unkempt. Right? He's going to. You know what? He's Howard Hughes. He's going to start.
He's not going to be like Howard Hughes.
He's going to have really, really long fingernails.
Don't do that to Howard Hughes. Here's what he reminds me of. Follow me on this. Trading Places. Dan Aykroyd.
Don't do that to Dan Aykroyd.
He went from the well-behaved gentleman in a suit to the drunken Santa Claus. Stuffing roast beef into his pockets.
Don't do that to Dan Aykroyd. So either way, it is what it is. And he can try to play this game all he wants about we didn't know, don't change, don't color outside the lines. Yeah, color outside the lines, meaning don't take the testimony.
Well, hang on a second. Don't color outside the lines? Hey, don't you scold my kids. What happened to coloring outside of the lines is artistic.
Okay.
Right? It's freedom of expression.
All right, we can go with that.
Okay.
But I love the fact that we're talking about the testimony of Secretary of Defense, top generals of the staff, the head of AFRICOM, and he's talking about...
They clearly have an agenda.
And now he's talking about coloring outside the lines because a reporter is referencing their testimony, their sworn testimony.
Right.
And that's coloring outside the lines? It's just, it never ends.
And he's a jackass. I mean, look, his job is to spin. I mean, that's what he does, right? He's a spin doctor.
Right.
That's what he does. He's there to take that question, catch it, spin the ball, and then deflect it. And that's basically what he did. Oh, of course, it's an attack, and then he minimizes and moves on, right? Almost like attorneys. No, think about it. Almost like an attorney, right?
I know.
If you have the facts, you argue the facts. If you have the law, you argue the law. And if you have nothing, you just argue.
Right.
Well, he has nothing, so what's he do? He just argues, right? Well, of course it was an attack. Now he minimizes, and then he deflects. Tries to be, it's classic.
Courtroom proceedings?
Yeah.
No, I agree, and I get that. It's just frustrating to me that he is such a weasel. I think that's the part that gets me the worst.
In an ideal world, he should be the mouthpiece. He should speak and say, yes, you know what? The administration made a mistake when we released this. Like we were just talking about prior to the break. But he's not going to do that.
It's just saddening to me.
I wonder why Robert Gibbs left.
Well, and you wonder why, too. And this tells you Panetta, when he retired.
He knew it was going to come out.
Who was the general who was the head of the CIA there, and all of a sudden, like, all this information came out. I can't recall his name right now. I can't. But he was the head of the CIA, and all of a sudden, like, this weird, because he was going to come out with the Benghazi stuff. And that's exactly what was Prez. He was going to come out with this Benghazi stuff, and all of a sudden, it surfaced that he was having an affair that he was probably having for 10 years and nobody knew about. Everyone knew about it, but nobody said anything. So it shows you the crony politics, just severe crony politics that goes on in that White House. And how many people jumped ship. And look at Hillary got out because she knew 2016 she wanted to run, and she had to start a separator. So
this is going to be interesting to see how this affects Hillary. But Troy Gowdy had a interesting reaction. So let's set the timetable for this. Okay. So we find out that via Fox News that this testimony was released. Correct. You and I spoke about it in detail. Mm-hmm. Had some production meetings. Mm-hmm. We then fired off emails to Representative Ice's office mm-hmm. and Representative Gowdy's office requesting statements. Correct? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Here's the response.
Mr. Gowdy, this is Sean from Sackheads Radio.
And Clint.
Just let me ask the question. Go ahead. What are your thoughts on the beginning?
Thank you, Jimmy. We will not waver in our commitment to see that justice is done for this terrible act in Benghazi. And make no mistake, justice will be done. That was the President of the United States over a year ago. We're investigating exactly what happened, but my biggest priority now is bringing those folks to justice. That was the President of the United States over a year ago. No one has been arrested. No one has been prosecuted. No one has been brought to justice. We don't even have access to the witnesses. You and the media were good enough for my 16 years as a prosecutor not to tell me how to do my job. And so far in Congress, y'all have been good enough not to tell me how to do my job. I'm not telling you how to do your job. But I'm going to ask you some questions, and if you can't answer these questions, then I'll leave you to draw whatever conclusion you want to draw about whether or not the media has provided sufficient oversight. Can you tell me why Chris Stevens was in Benghazi the night that he was killed? Do you know? Does it bother you whether or not you know why Chris Stevens was in Benghazi? Do you know why we were the last flag flying in Benghazi after the British had left and the Red Cross had been bombed? Do you know why requests for additional security were denied? Do you know why an ambassador asking for more security days and weeks before he was murdered and those requests went unheeded? Do you know the answer to why those requests went unheeded? Do you know why no assets were deployed during the siege? And I've heard the explanation, which defies logic, frankly, that we couldn't have gotten there in time, but you know they didn't know when it was going to end. So how can you possibly cite that as an excuse? Do you know whether the president called any of our allies and said, can you help? We have men under attack. Can you answer that? Do any of you know why Susan Rice was picked? The Secretary of State did not go. She says she doesn't like Sunday talk shows. That's the only media venue she does not like, if that's true. Why was Susan Rice on the 5 Sunday talk shows? Do you know the origin of this mythology? That it was spawned as a spontaneous reaction to a video. Do you know where that started? Do you know how we got from no evidence of that to that being the official position of the administration? In conclusion, Congress is supposed to provide oversight. The voters are supposed to provide oversight. And you were supposed to provide oversight. That's why you have special liberties, and that's why you have special protections. I am not surprised that the President of the United States called this a phony scandal. I'm not surprised that Secretary Clinton asked, what difference does it make? I'm not even surprised that Jay Carney said Benghazi happened a long time ago. I'm just surprised at how many people bought it.
Now that sound was him throwing the papers, him throwing his hands up.
I love Trey Gowdy.
And walking away.
I absolutely love Trey Gowdy. I respect that man so much. And again, not every politician, everything a politician says and does, I agree with. But I just think he is chock full of integrity. I just think that he understands that certain things just can't go overlooked. And he is just a pit bull when it comes to stuff like this. He's
a man of principle.
Absolutely. He's a great member of Congress. If I was the president someday, which will never happen because I'm too smart for the job,
yeah,
he would have a position in my cabinet for sure, without a doubt, just because of what he's shown me as a congressman so far. So all that happens this week, and that brings us to our next question. When will A special prosecutor be appointed, or a special investigator? And B, is there enough there to bring articles of impeachment now? And we've stayed away from this for a long time because as we talked off the air, there's been a lot of things going on, but it's kind of, we like to get a lot more facts before we jump to conclusions. Mm-hmm. We're not like mainstream media that likes to jump on the whole video thing right off the bat. With everything that's happened over Benghazi and Obamacare and everything else, do we now, A, have the time to, or is it the time to appoint that special prosecutor and begin researching the articles of impeachment?
I don't know about the Benghazi incident specifically, unless you can see where the fraud section mm-hmm. could apply, mm-hmm. and I don't know that it does because I don't know. I have not sufficiently researched that to see if it applies to the president himself, or if national security affairs would override that, which I can see it happening. I just thought it was an interesting code. However, Title 5 of the United States Code, Section 7311, says that an individual may not accept or hold a position in the government of the United States or the government of the District of Columbia if, and then it lists 4 things, but one of them is advocates the overthrow of our constitutional form of government. And the second is a member of an organization he knows advocates the overthrow of our constitutional form of government. And then the other two deal with labor union, so participates in a strike or asserts the right to strike, or is a member of an organization that does those things. In essence, you can look it up yourself. Well, Title 18 of the United States Code, Section 1918, makes a violation of that section a crime. So it not only says that you can't hold a position in the government of the U.S. if you do any of those things, but if you do those things, you shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 1 year and a day or both. I would argue that you may be able to make the case that the president advocates or has participated in the overthrow of our constitutional form of government, in that he has made illegal appointments while Congress has been in session, but saying they were out of session, and the courts have ruled on that, but his administration wants to ignore those rulings, and failing to uphold the laws of our land, specifically on immigration.
That's the big one. He's issued a direct order to not have certain immigration laws enforced and followed.
His constitutional authority under Article 2, Section 3, one of the things says he shall take care that all laws be faithfully executed. All laws, not laws he agrees with, but all
that
laws.
crosses us over into a dictatorship.
And the other thing I want to point out is, according to the United States Constitution, Article 1, Section 1, all legislative powers shall be vested in a Congress in the United States. All legislative powers, not administrative powers, not administrative authority to make administrative rules. Legislative powers to make laws rest basically with Congress. And he, as the president, shall take care the laws be faithfully executed. And he's given direct orders that the laws of this land not be faithfully executed, in direct violation of his oath of office and in direct violation into his constitutional authority. As such, if he is not an advocate for the Constitution or for his constitutional authority, you look at health care and other things that are clearly against the principles of the Constitution and our four organic documents, I would say that he is actively participating in the downfall or overturning of our constitutional form of government. That's my argument. If Congress has the testicular fortitude to attempt to bring any articles of impeachment, we'll see. What are your thoughts?
Well, I agree. I think the big one that stands out for me specifically is the immigration one. And listen, it's not like a court came back and said, hey, you know what, we don't find this law to be applicable or whatever. This is strictly, I'm not doing anything on immigration. I'm ordering you not to do anything on immigration until we pass a new law to replace it. And that's not the same. You know, if the court came back and said, hey, this is an unconstitutional law, it needs to be amended, changes, it needs to be suspended until you do such, I understand that, because that is a court doing what it's supposed to do. And then he is following the law because a judge has ordered that. That's different. But when he comes out, especially with immigration, and turns, again, political, says, we're not enforcing certain immigration laws until we have the laws in place that we want to enforce, which is pretty much what he's saying.
Right.
That is no longer a presidency, as I said a few minutes ago. That's a dictatorship.
I'll give you another one. What about August 14th of 2013, where his administration delayed the provisions in the Obamacare law?
Yeah.
In order to cap out of pocket health care costs.
Yep.
That's not in the law. He's unilaterally choosing to do that. What about in July of 2013, when the 4th District Court of Appeals, federal court, ruled that his recess appointment to the National Labor Relations Board must be approved by Congress, and it was unconstitutional. They've ignored that. No, go ahead.
No, I agree with you. I think that's huge. And, you know, is it one of those things, is Congress, and listen, I know it's John Boner, and he's pretty much as useless as they come, but are they afraid that this country would fall into such despair and that perhaps lead to violence if we impeach the first black president, despite what the evidence is? And
look, Bill Clinton was impeached. He wasn't convicted, but Bill Clinton was impeached.
I understand that, and I agree with you. But is there a fear that if they start the impeachment process, that there will be an uprising of minority groups in this country as well as white groups who think that this entire thing is race-based and will not follow through with articles impeachment as a result?
Perhaps. I think it's a valid question, but
I'm not saying that's the right reason not to do it.
And it's not the right reason.
But
maybe they believe they wouldn't get a conviction.
Is that the reason for their impotence?
Look, it doesn't matter.
I honestly think,
because if members of Congress truly believe that impeachable offenses have been committed, then they have a duty to begin impeachment proceedings.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it doesn't matter whether you think you'll get a conviction in the Senate or not.
It shouldn't matter.
Right? That's not your job.
If the evidence is there, you have to start it.
Right.
I agree, and I think they should.
I think there's a case absolutely that can be made. For impeachment proceedings.
There's been, 4 or 5 presidents that have been impeached over the history of our country. So it's not like it's never happened before. I think it's 5. I think Clinton was number 5. It's not like it's never happened before. I think that there is that emotional issue that they're dealing with, and I don't agree with it, but I think it's there saying, hey, if we all of a sudden start pushing articles of impeachment, the first black president, look at everything that they won't have the support of mainstream media. They will call it a witch hunt. They will get the masses going. And in a way, and I think rightfully so, if they impeach the president, they are essentially impeaching mainstream media. 2. Who?
Andrew Johnson.
Yeah.
And Bill Clinton.
That's right. Nixon got out before he was impeached.
Nixon resigned.
That's right. So this will be an impeachment on the media, so to speak, as well, because everyone's going to turn around and say, hey, you've protected this guy for the last 4+ years, 5 years now, and a lot of you knew a lot of this was bunked, and that would start to come to the surface. So they will not have the support of mainstream media should they start going into impeachment process, and that is going to, the drive-by voters, as I think Rush Limbaugh calls them, the low-information voters, are going to really get into a tizzy and get upset. There would be civil unrest, I believe, if we got to articles of impeachment. However, you have to look at the good of the country overall and not just the good of a few.
Look, neither Andrew Johnson nor Bill Clinton were convicted.
Right.
They were just impeached.
Right.
And again, I don't know that
it would never happen.
I don't know that Obama would be convicted or not.
It would never happen in the Senate.
Should Bill Clinton have been convicted?
Yes.
Yeah, probably.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
He lied under oath. How do you vote not guilty for that?
Right. Because it was political.
Right.
But that brings us back to what we say almost every single week. You need to elect people of principle, not of party. People that in a situation like this, if there's a true cause for impeachment, a true reason for impeachment, the evidence is there, the impeachment starts, it would get voted on appropriately versus politically. And that is the danger of just voting for a letter next to a name and not the person in principle.
And the danger of our two-party system.
It absolutely is a danger. I was listening to a show the other night, and they were talking about, and I didn't agree, and it was a good show, but I didn't agree, and they were saying, we got to get rid of all the Dems, and, I was chatting in the chat room, and I said, hey, there was a guy I was arguing with a little bit, but I said, we need to start the third party, we need to get rid of the two-party system. Well, if there's a third party, it will just split, and then we'll lose power. We've already lost power, and a lot of the people that we're electing into these positions are not true conservative people. They don't have the best interests of the country in mind. They don't care about the Constitution, even if they have an R under their name. Look at Chris Christie. You know what I mean? R next to his name, but he's not really a conservative. He just has an R next to his name. He's a diet Democrat, if you will, which is kind of funny to put with Chris Christie. That's not the point. And he said, well, if we split the party, we just can't do it right now. And I said, if not now, when? look, how much worse does this country need to get before you realize that we need to change the way we do things? We've pretty much gone as far away from a constitutional republic as we possibly can and still be considered a constitutional republic. We're borderline on a direct democracy at this point. Like, we're not far from it.
We're not. And 17th Amendment changed that. Look, we're well on our way to being a socialist country if we are not socialist already, and a constitutional republic.
That we are.
Absolutely, and a constitutional republic in name only.
And that's the problem. So we need to push. I really think it needs to happen, even if
Convention of the States.
We've pushed for that before too, but I think the articles of impeachment need to go through to prove a point that you can't act as a lawless president and have it go unnoticed, and B, it will show you which senators are in there for politics and which senators are in there to serve.
If there's enough evidence.
If there's enough
right?
evidence. But the case would show that. The special prosecutor's office.
Look, and high crimes and misdemeanors is a pretty vast phrase.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I mean that includes a lot of things. We gave but a couple examples. We're up against a break right now, my friend.
We are 347-205-9399 here on the Sackheads Radio Show, simulcasting on Blog Talk Radio.
I have to keep us in check since Sacco's not here.
And Spreaker and iHeartRadio. We'll be back in 3.
Where is Sacco? I thought he was here.
Well, he was, but